Hello, everyone. Hi, Dave.
Hey Morgan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good.
Perfect. Looks like we've got some folks joining. Welcome, everyone. There we go. Welcome, everybody. We will give just a few minutes to allow some more folks to jump on with us. Hi, Katie and Seth, and I think someone else joined on. Welcome, everyone. We'll give it just a couple of minutes before we get started, so thanks for joining. Let's see. Make sure my video is coming through okay. Awesome. Let's do maybe one more minute. I think my video might be clearing up a bit too, hopefully. Yours looks really clear, Dave, so that's all that really matters.
Yeah. That looks pretty good.
Yeah, am I looking
Better.
clear for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. At
Okay.
least to me.
Yeah, strange. Well, we will go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone who is joining, who is watching a little bit later on our replay and YouTube videos. Welcome to all of you all, and thanks for joining us for part two or series two. We need to come up with a better name for it, of Ask a Developer, which is where we sit down with mentors across our platform who are software developers and just pick their brains a little bit about what they do, how they do it, how it plays into the greater tech ecosystem, especially in South Carolina. So we're really excited to have one of our mentors with us today, Mr. Dave, who is a mentor to a couple of learners across our platform and has also done some guest lecturing over on our YouTube channel. So please check that out as well. And is just a really great guy as well. Dave, how long have you been with us? A couple months, maybe? A little bit more longer
Um,
than.
yeah, probably close to 6 months now, maybe.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Dave is a software developer, of course. He is with a local company. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. And he is just a wealth of knowledge. So I'm so excited to have him here for our second series. For those of you who are new to SC Codes or learning a little bit more about us, we are a free platform for South Carolina residents to gain coding skills. So I'll talk a little bit more about how to get connected with SC Codes towards the end of our chat. But for now, let's dive into getting to know Dave a little bit better. So I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, maybe the company you work for, just so we can get a better idea.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. So I've been in the industry probably pretty close to 30 years now. Um, I mean, sort of going back in time, just give you a perspective on my educational background because I didn't start out in the software space. I have an undergrad in finance from the University of Colorado Boulder, and I went into commercial banking for a period of time, and I kind of realized as I started picking up tasks that were computer related. And at that time, it was like, Lotus 1-2-3 was just coming out on PCs and all that kind of stuff. And so I started picking up some tasks, and I realized that I enjoyed programming, basically doing programming in Lotus 1-2-3, sort of picked that up on my own, automated some of with macros, some of the stuff that we needed to do for the bank and all that. And it just sort of caught my interest, and I realized that, there was an opportunity to, take it on as a career. So I ended up going back to graduate school at the University of Colorado Boulder again. And I, at the time I just did a lot of reading about, what kind of degree program could I potentially get. And because I had a business undergrad, going into computer science was going to be a lot of additional, school work, but I could get an IT degree, basically a master's level IT degree, with, less sort of catch up to do. And it turned out that at the time, the trend, sort of one of the big trends in software, was object-oriented software development. So at that time, Smalltalk was probably the most prevalent object-oriented language. I think C++ may have existed at that time as well. But that was a trend that I had identified just by doing a lot of reading, and I found that the University of Colorado Boulder had a graduate degree program in the IT program that was one of only 5 graduate programs I could find that taught a curriculum focused on object-oriented technology, object-oriented software development. So it sort of worked out for me, and I ended up kind of hitting the wave, if you will, for object-oriented software development. It was, on the rise at that time. So when I graduated from graduate school, I was able to pick up a job doing Smalltalk programming for a local software company. And at that time, I lived in Denver. And so, that was sort of the kickoff for me. I did software development on the Smalltalk platform for I don't know, a number of years, 5 years or so. And then in the sort of, mid to late 90s, we started to hear about this thing called Java. And, by 97 or 98, I guess, I don't remember when the first Java 1 was, but, some people in the local Smalltalk user group had gone to the first Java 1 and came back and were really excited about it. So we started to shift our emphasis a bit. So I started doing Java development probably right around 99 or 2000. And then only about a year and a half ago did I sort of switch from Java to Elixir as my focus. Along the way, I've done a lot of different kinds of programming languages, JavaScript and a little bit of Python, Scala. I did a fair amount of work with Scheme, which is a dialect of Lisp. I don't even remember whatever else. I mean, a little C and such along the way, but predominantly, Java, and then now more recently Elixir. So I guess that's sort of, and I would say, like, along the way, I've worked in a number of different kinds of contexts as a software developer. So my preferred world is software product development, ideally in a small software product company. I really like working in startups, and I've worked in quite a number of them, or several of them over time. Several of them have been pretty successful. One was called Synexus. It's still, it was basically a hospitality ASP, what we call now software as a service business, basically, but it was a piece of software that allowed small boutique hotel chains to manage hotel inventory and do property management and things like that. It's still out there. If you book a hotel room at some of the kind of higher end smaller chains, oftentimes you'll end up using Synexus Agent to do that booking. And then the one that some folks may be aware of is Rally Software Development. So Rally was founded by my business partner, Alan Strait, and another guy. I was the first employee beyond the founders. And that one was an agile software development, agile program management tool, basically platform that was, I think, probably the first in the market, certainly one of the very earliest. And when the Agile wave started to hit, and that eventually went public and was sold to Computer Associates, and I don't know who it's owned by now, maybe Broadcom or somebody, but it's still out there as one of the bigger Agile tools. So I've done software product development in product companies, but also then in IT. So I've done a lot of work in IT as a consultant. I have a consulting business with my friend Alan. We've just worked together, off and on as consultants for a long time, and we've done work for companies like Johnson and Johnson and Target and others. And in that kind of scenario, we're consultants or contractors. We come in and we work on some aspect of the system. It tends to be much more focused on a particular kind of, they give us a particular objective to work on, and we're more focused on that. And I would say I enjoy that, but I don't enjoy it as much as doing software product development. I think that's, for me, really been the thing that's been most interesting. And I've just now landed back at a software product company after having done consulting for a long time. And I work for a company called Undigital now, and they're in the marketing technology space, which is not a domain that I have a lot of background in. I've done software development in a lot of business domains, container shipping, freight, railroads, e-commerce, mortgage banking, all kinds of different things, lots of healthcare stuff. But I've never really done anything in the marketing technology, ad technology kind of space, so this is sort of new for me. But if you go check out undigital.com, you'll kind of get an idea of what they're doing. But essentially, what it boils down to is when you open up a box, when you buy something from an e-commerce company and then you open up a box, typically it's kind of a boring experience. Like, you open it up and there's peanuts and there might be a packing slip, and if somebody sent you something as a birthday present or whatever, they might have put a little, note, and it typically sort of prints out on the packing slip, and it's not very exciting. Well, this company is developing technology that allows e-commerce companies to insert really high quality paper, high quality printing, advertising and marketing pieces in boxes at the time that the boxes are packed, which is, and for those inserts to be related to digital marketing campaigns, the ability to basically have a printed piece of advertising related to a digital marketing campaign has really never existed before. And this all depends on having a really fast back-end system, which happens to be written in Elixir, that can basically take information about which order is coming down the pick, pack, ship, the distribution line in a warehouse, and literally within 15 seconds of finding out that an order has started, actually have a piece of advertising on a printer that is fully customized for the person whose box is being packed at that moment. And that's really kind of groundbreaking technology, and a lot of really excited customers. So I guess that's kind of my story.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and also a really great segue into the next question I want to ask is some of the challenges that you address during the day as a software developer. And I guess that may be one, is kind of thinking about how this technology works with the packing system, but would love to hear more about that and other challenges that you face and address during the day in your role.
Yeah, to me, two things come to mind. One is domain knowledge, which, one of the things, sort of takeaways I want to impart in this conversation is, as important as it is to learn programming languages and to know particular technologies, don't forget that we're building software on behalf of a business, normally. At least I do. I know some people, build software for, science or other kinds of, applications, but for the most part, most of us are going to be building software for businesses. And one of the hard things, I think, as a software developer is oftentimes you're pretty far removed from the people who actually use the software or have, the problem. I haven't, I mean, sometimes the software you're building is consumer facing, like literally the world. But a lot of times the consumers of your software are people who are line of business employees in whatever business you're working for. And it's sometimes hard to understand what needs to be built or how to build it in an appropriate way because you don't have enough understanding of the business itself. I mean, like that's a challenge I have right now with marketing and advertising technology. I'm having to really come up to speed on how that business works and why they do what they do, the vocabulary associated with it, all that kind of stuff. So I think the more you can do to understand the business that you're participating in, that you're building software for, and ideally the more time you can spend with the line of business people and talk to them, build relationships, ask them questions about like what's hard for them and why they do what they do and all that. It really does make a huge difference in being able to design software that solves problems that they have, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. So I think that's one thing. And then another thing that's pretty typical is, I mean, everybody knows there's just a vast amount of technology out there. I mean, even if you just focus on one cloud platform, how many different products does Google have, that are part of their cloud platform? Dozens and dozens, right? And it's really hard to know everything and to be up on everything. So you're kind of always in the position of having to learn something new. And I mean, I think that's both a challenge and one of the really great things about being a software developer is you get to learn all the time. There's always opportunities to learn new stuff.
That's awesome. And so I'm assuming that is probably one of the most rewarding parts of your day as well, is just learning.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I personally really enjoy the interactions with other people, whether the sales side of the house or I like being. I mean, part of what I like about working in small companies, especially startups, is you're very close to the executive team. You're very close to the sales team. To the customers. I mean, I interact with customers on a regular basis at M Digital, and so I mean, I find it really rewarding to be part of the team that delivers solutions, and then actually see those things go into production and see customers being successful with them and get that feedback and stuff. So, but yeah, learning is definitely part of it.
That's awesome. Awesome. And so switching gears just a bit, so our platform, of course, we have learners who are career changers, who are trying out coding for the first time, some who are skilling up. But we speak a lot to those who are coming from different backgrounds. And you talked a little bit about having a finance background. So I'm curious what you think are some of the advantages and unique skill sets that learners who have a different background, developers who have a different background may have versus those who may have gone a more traditional route with like an information systems degree or something. So self-taught.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big advantage that you have is that you have a background in some business domain. I mean, so typical. I mean, if somebody's gone through high school and then they go into undergrad and they get a CS degree and so forth, the thing about it is you probably don't. You know technology really well, programming or something like that, but you don't know any particular business. And a lot of us in the software space are sort of we're experts in software or some technology, but we're not really experts in a particular business domain. So coming from the business side of the house or from another career, you really have an opportunity to leverage those skills and your knowledge about that business domain into a job as a software developer, perhaps in that business domains, in the same business, kind of business, because you will have much more understanding of how to build software successfully for that business, just by virtue of all the domain knowledge that you have. I think that's a huge advantage.
Definitely. And so as someone who has been in different roles and definitely on a managerial side and has definitely seen a lot of resumes and portfolios and that kind of thing, what advice would you give to developers, future developers who are coming from diverse backgrounds, during the interview process? Like, how can they stand out during the interview process to our hiring manager?
For me, I mean, I like to see people who are not just 100% focused on a programming language or just the technology. I want to see interest in the business. I mean, I think, again, I mean, I'm probably sound like a bit of a broken record, but
No.
my, my conviction, as a software developer has always been that the business drives, and we're in service to the business. And so I mean, to me, it's really important to see some interest in the business and like why we're doing what we're doing, what our customers, problems are, those kinds of things. Interest in those kinds of, concerns, because that feeds into your ability to be able to design software appropriately. And at some point, you're gonna actually start, being responsible for design, and more than just design of, a small piece of a program. I mean, as you grow in your career, you're going to start being responsible for, being a part of a team that designs entire solutions. And you really can't do that effectively unless you understand the business, better. So that's a kind of a crucial thing to me. I also would say that I like to see people who are willing and interested in interacting, outside the technology community. One of the things that's really hard in software is communication. I mean, it's another, challenge. Software is a intensely, human and communication oriented activity. It's a team sport, and we have to do is the best that we can to communicate with the business side of the house and other parties that are involved, stakeholders. And so your willingness to be able to have those conversations and be involved and all of that, I think, is another really key thing. I mean, we can teach you a particular programming language, we can teach you certain kinds of technologies and stuff, but what we can't teach as readily are soft skills and just willingness and interest in being involved in the broader context of the business and like why we're doing what we're doing. And so to me, those are kind of important things. I have to think a little more about what else, but
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome and great to hear you say, because I think before I started working connected to tech, I'm not a tech person, but connected to the tech world, I really had this vision of software developers being kind of like in this isolated space of, solving programs, sending it to someone, and that's it, and not this idea of how they are supporting the team and business as a whole. So
yeah.
that's really great to hear.
Well, and I think it used to be maybe more that way. I mean, it was sort of like, I mean, with the waterfall software development methodologies, it was a bit more, you had business analysts and people who would like sort of go figure out what needs to get done, and then somebody would write a giant spec and it would get chucked over the wall at the software team, development team, and you'd go off in your corner and develop for like 2 years and then say, hey, look, we built it. And they'd say, no, not really. I mean, not even close, and that's where Agile came from, right? I mean, Agile is about, valuing communication and interactions with people and working in short time boxes and getting feedback quickly and all those kinds of things. And so it's very different than it used to be.
Yeah, that checking it over the wall is a great visual for that. That's exactly what I think traditionally
Yeah.
software developers. Um, awesome. So diving in a little more about you, I would love to hear you speak on any technical trends, data, topics in the world that have sparked your interest lately, or things that you're learning more about.
I mean, I already mentioned I'm learning about, marketing and ad technology because of the, job I have now. But I mean, I think one of the things that's a an opportunity is the trend towards multi-core computing architectures. I mean, so, where all kinds of devices that we have multiple cores, running on their CPUs basically. And so we talked in the Elixir talk that I did, and then I think, Drew talked about it in his as well when he talked about different programming languages, that, there's some opportunities to do new things because of those, additional computing resources to do things in parallel. to have more concurrency in our programs and all those kinds of things. So that is sort of relevant to me because it's one of the things that attracted me, or it's one of the reasons that, you know, programming languages like Elixir are really shining today, because they take advantage of multi-core architectures and they allow you to do a lot of stuff, you know, concurrently. And that's really valuable in a cloud world. And, you know, when you're building software systems for large numbers of people or high transaction, you know, throughput types of systems, business systems. So I think, you know, multi-core is kind of something that drives technology. I mean, certainly, like, you know, Internet of Things has become a big deal. You know, AI and all of that is. I mean, I've done some work with AI, and I mean, that's not a focus for me right now, but I definitely, you know, it's certainly true that artificial intelligence and data science, analytics, those areas are very growing, you know, areas, and there's opportunities for people who are getting involved to work in those spaces. They have, you know, better compensation because they are kind of the hot, you know, part of the market at this point. And, you know, so, I mean, I see those as trends. I mean, personally, I'm not focused on those as much. I mean, I'm pretty interested in analytics at speed, like streaming analytics and stuff that has applicability to what I do, but, I don't have enough, you know, stats and math background, honestly, to go be a data scientist or, you know, you know, understand all the algorithms that the, you know, machine learning guys play with all day long.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing what you are interested in, and I'm sure that'll pique the interest of some of our learners and folks watching on the platform as well. So kind of the same, well, in the same vein, any trends, things that are interesting to you specifically about South Carolina's tech market, or anything that is just unique about South Carolina in general when it comes to software development or tech in general?
I mean, I think the fact that it's like growing, I mean, it's sort of maybe a bit nascent. It's sort of, you know, it's not as mature as other parts of the country for the, you know, the tech community isn't. But I mean, I spent a lot of time in the, you know, Boulder area working in a lot of, you know, tech companies. So that, you know, the corridor from Boulder down through Denver to Colorado Springs in Colorado is, you know, chock full of technology companies. It's certainly not as big as like the Valley is or anything like that. And then you have, you know, so Charleston's kind of this up and coming, to me, it feels like, you know, Boulderish type of, you know, environment technology perspective, where you have little software companies springing up, some larger ones, you know, moving in. There's a lot of variety in the kinds of technologies that people are, you know, applications that people are working on and so forth. But we have some, you know, pretty well-known entrepreneurs in the area that are funding companies, you know, startups and so forth. So, and I think, you know, with the government, with the naval base and also, you know, the focus on logistics, intermodal shipping, all that, there's a lot of, you know, industry here that needs technology. So I'm not as close to it. Honestly, I've only been here like 6 years, and I've been, by way of SE codes and, you know, Tech After 5 in various ways, I've been trying to sort of understand the South Carolina market a bit. But honestly, I've done so much work, I mean, in New Jersey and everywhere else. And, you know, I haven't had any actual software development work here in South Carolina yet, per se.
Oh,
So,
well, that's definitely unique. That's that's something there. Very cool. And just the fact that it's growing. We on our Tech Tuesday post try to follow some of the data around jobs and the economic boost and that kind of thing in the tech market. So that's awesome just to hear that it is growing, and we're trying to follow
yeah,
what that looks like.
yeah, I
Very
think it is.
so I think you might have touched on this just a little bit, but had a question about any blogs or books that you may recommend for aspiring developers. Any, I guess, professional development is what that could fall under.
Yeah, I mean, I have some opinions about this, and
Okay.
blogs, and podcasts, I have fewer ideas about. I mean, I think there are some, you know, Joel on software, and there's some big name blogs out there for sure that that probably have really good articles and advice. I mean, there's always pretty good stuff, Medium articles and whatnot.
Mm.
I tend to sort of focus in on topics that I'm particularly interested in, and I find there are certain people like in the Elixir community that are particularly valuable to read, what they write and listen to their podcasts and stuff like that. But at a more general level, I guess certainly for any programming language that you have, you could find the top books and so forth. But I would, again, like a takeaway, would from me would be I would encourage anybody who's wanting to be a developer to think about reading on topics broader than just programming languages. I mean, so one of the books, I have them here. One of the books that I am particularly, I push on people because I believe in this. So this book is called Domain-Driven Design. This is the original blue book called Domain-Driven Design. This is a patterns book, and it's about how it's an approach to building software systems that focuses on the business object model, the business model, whether you're using functional programming or object-oriented, it doesn't really matter, but the model that we build that helps us express the solution that meets a particular business need. That is a patterns book. Some people find that pretty hard to follow. So I have a buddy named Von Vernon, who I've been friends with for a long time, who wrote this book. It's called Implementing Domain-Driven Design. And this is definitely my recommendation for, I think everybody should read this, regardless of what you're doing, what programming language, and he does have examples in a lot of programming languages, but this book is how you take the patterns that Eric Evans wrote about in domain-driven design and actually implement them. And this is, domain-driven design is a skill set and a knowledge area that is in demand and that is highly relevant to building business systems. And it's another one of those things that I always ask people in interviews, what do you know about domain-driven design? And if they know anything, I'll dig into that, because I think this is the key philosophy, if you will, for how to structure software systems and build the heart of the software anyway. Not necessarily all the pieces, but the part that actually solves problems. So Implementing Domain-Driven Design by Von Vernon. And he's great. I mean, he has tons of videos and stuff you can watch. I used to go to lunch with him back when I lived in Colorado, and just, we became friends, and we attended the Domain-Driven Design user group in Denver for a long time. And he ended up writing basically, I think, which is the second most important book in the space. And he does a great job. He's a really fantastic. The other thing I would say is another book I'd give you is like The Lean Startup. Now, this is arguably about, software startups and so forth. But I think what's relevant about this is we're not in a world anymore where you can sort of go off and code for 2 months and then just pop your head up and say, hey, look at this great thing I built. We have to really, as a business and as developers, we have to be in contact with the customers and get feedback. It's related to Agile and lean software development. There's a number of books out there on the topic of lean software development. All this stuff has to do with how do we go, what's the process for building software in a way that we don't speculate too much, where we do as much as we know, and then we get feedback, and then when we know what we're supposed to do for the next thing, we take a short period of time and go build that, and then we get feedback. So we're never risking spending a lot of the business's money investing it on building something that's totally speculative. We know that what we're building is actually solving a problem, and we get feedback on it very quickly. I think those are as crucial as skills as and stuff to read and be up on as any programming language. And in fact, at the end of the day, those kinds of skills are the things that you're going to eventually be able to leverage into higher paying jobs, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily just the programming that will get you a higher paying job. It's your ability to do some of the more soft skills kinds of things that other people are not interested in doing or can't do.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to make sure when we upload this to YouTube that we pin those. I tried to pin where that is so that we pin those books,
Sure.
resources for anyone who watches. Thank you for sharing those in the actual book too. So we know you're really reading
Yeah.
them when you, let's see.
Yeah, I
Um,
have a huge bookshelf of many books.
Wonderful. As our time winds down, I would open the floor up to any questions that we may have. And thank you for everyone who has jumped on and joined and stayed on. That's always a great sign. But I would like to just have you reflect, look back a little bit, as possibly a closing statement for us, and just what do you wish that you had known before you started your career? What advice would you have given to yourself? If you could sum it all up in a nice, pretty bow, looking back 20, 30-ish years, what would you say?
Yeah. Um, I think I didn't realize how much software development is a human and communication oriented kind of endeavor. I mean, I guess I just thought like you learn a programming language and you get to build all this cool stuff or whatever, but I didn't really appreciate how much it relies on interpersonal skills and relationships and stuff. And I probably didn't do a very good job of that, early in my career, and focusing on those kinds of things and doing, didn't do a good job of that. But I think that's the kind of the ticket for building really quality software. It's not just the technical skills; it's also those other kinds of skills, and it's how you know that you're building the right thing, and it's the only way you can figure out what needs to be built is to have a conversation with the right people, and that communication has to be pretty high bandwidth, and it has to be clear, and it has to be checked and validated and all those kinds of things. And it's a whole different skill set that I didn't even think about, but I think it's just as important as the technology.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that um, conversation and just provides a different look at what software development
Yeah.
is and can be for our learners. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining us for our second edition of Ask a Developer. Again, thank you to all of our listeners who are here and will listen in the next couple of hours and days and weeks via YouTube and Instagram Live. If you would like more information on SC Codes, please click the link in our bio so you can learn more about our classes, our awesome events like this. You can also look back at our events and see where Dave has shared some awesome knowledge with us before. So thank you again to everyone. Dave, thanks for all that you do across our platform, and we hope to see you back here maybe for an Elixir Part
Yeah.
2 very soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.